In 2006, the Pokémon Company took their most iconic design and reimagined it completely. Sure, Shiny Charizard was technically around since 2000 with the release of Pokémon Gold and Silver for the Game Boy Color, but this was its first ever appearance in the TCG. And that wasn't the only thing that made this Charizard stand out. It was also a Delta Species Pokémon. Delta Species were one of the few mechanics truly unique to the TCG. Instead of sticking to their normal typings from the video games, Pokémon were mutated through a storyline about Holon scientists and magnetic radiation. Suddenly you had things like a lightning-type Gyarados or a fighting-type Blastoise, something you would never see in the video games. Of course, the crown jewel of this mechanic was the Gold Star Delta Species Charizard from EX Dragon Frontiers. Not only do we get Charizard in its shiny form, jet black scales, cobalt wings, and one of the most incredible artworks this lizard has ever seen. But we also get the Delta twist, making it a darkness type instead of fire. For the time, pull rates were pretty tough. You'd find roughly 1 gold star per 72 packs, or about 1 every 2 booster boxes. And since Charizard shared the spotlight with an equally incredible gold star Mew, your real odds of pulling this Charizard were closer to 1 in 4 boxes. To make things worse, Dragon Frontiers wasn't printed in especially large numbers to begin with, and that scarcity shows up in the PSA Pop Report, where fewer than 100 Gem Mint 10s exist, and raw copies usually look like they were carried loose in backpacks since middle school. That's why in early 2025, a PSA 10 copy sold for $40,000. All for a card you could technically still pull from a booster pack, not even 20 years old. Next up, get ready for some deja vu. If you thought the 70,000 play point Umbreon was peak madness, well, you're right, but this one is not far behind. Because if you were too lazy to attend 191 sanctioned events, the Pokémon Company gave you a chance at redemption. But this time, luck would pay off instead of hard work. Tucked deep inside Pop Series 5, a set with just 17 cards and no guaranteed holos, was an absolute monster. The English Umbreon Gold Star. These weren't sold in stores. You'd get a 2-card pop pack for once again attending sanctioned league events. The pull rate for this particular card was 1 in 80 packs, and most copies were opened by kids who immediately bent the cards, threw them in a box, or tossed them in their backpacks next to a half-drank Capri Sun. Which is why surviving copies of Umbreon Gold Star are so rare. PSA has graded just over 600 in total, and only around 50 have earned the Gem Mint 10. That scarcity, plus the fact that Shiny Umbreon once again looks amazing, makes this card one of the most sought-after English Gold Stars ever printed. Back just a few months ago, one of these PSA 10s sold for a staggering $50,000. So no, it's not as rare as the Play promo, but it's surprisingly close. Now on to 2008. But we need to rewind the clock for a second, because it was 2004 that marked the very first year of the Pokémon World Championships as we know them today, with age divisions, international invites, and exclusive prize cards for the winners. Now fast forward to 2008, and while this year didn't deliver one of those over-the-top Grail cards, it's the perfect chance to highlight what those World Championship prize cards actually looked like. The 3 champions, one from Juniors, one from Seniors, and one from Masters, each walked away with a #1 trainer trophy card. Unlike the Japanese trophies of the late 90s and early 2000s, this version was actually printed in English. The text reads, "If you won this card at the 2008 Pokemon Trading Card Game World Championships, you may return to battle the best in 2009. Congratulations." This exact template has been used since 2004 and is still used to this day. As for value, thing is, none of these cards ever hit the open market, so it's really only speculation. All we do know is that there is a current eBay listing for every prize card ever made that's going for a nice cool $9 million. So there's some perspective. Now I'm gonna do everyone a favor by removing all #1, 2, and 3 trainers from the list moving forward. Because to no one's surprise, in most cases, they will be the most valuable card of each year. And the list would get pretty boring. Plus, they rarely ever go on sale, so I'd just be making up their prices. Which I have no problem doing, of course, but still, you guys deserve the truth. That, however, doesn't mean we're done with prize cards altogether. Because in 2009, we arrive at the final piece of one of the most fascinating trophy card trios in the entire hobby. The Mysterious Pearl, Miracle Diamond, and Wonder Platinum. Mysterious Pearl had first appeared in 2007, featuring a brilliant silver medallion with Palkia in the background. And while rare, this card was distributed in surprisingly large numbers across Japan's national tournament scene called Battle Road. Miracle Diamonds came next, featuring a bluish silver medallion and Dialga in the background. These were awarded in 2007 and 2008 with a much tighter distribution of just 120 copies. But the rarest and by far most sought after was saved for 2009, the Wonder Platinum. Once again, the card featured a shimmering amulet, this time with Giratina in the background, completing the creation trio of Pokemon lore. And there are a few things that make this card unique. First, it was the only card in the trio to be officially numbered, 033 DPT-P, and it was tied to the Japanese Championship Representative Tournament, which was their feeder event to Worlds. The scale of that tournament was enormous, with qualifiers held in all 47 prefectures, then regional playoffs, and finally the championships at the Prince Park Tower in Tokyo. At the very end of that process, just 20 copies of Wonder Platinum were handed out to TCG finalists. That makes it one of the rarest trophy cards ever produced after the e-card era. In 2023, a PSA 10 copy sold at auction for over $51,000, while current listings are breaking the six-figure mark. And if you can believe it, the Japanese tournament circuit was not done minting grails. If 2009's Wonder Platinum felt like the peak of Japan's Diamond and Pearl era, 2010 showed that Pokemon was only just getting bigger. The qualifying system for their Battle Road tournaments expanded dramatically, once again across all 47 prefectures, whittling down thousands of players until the finals at the Tokyo Dome. But this time the prizes changed. Instead of continuing the Pearl Diamond Platinum Amulet line, Pokemon introduced something entirely new, the Master's Key. A few things made this prize different. First, it wasn't just for the TCG anymore. For the first time, video game finalists also received the same prize card, with a red case for TCG players and a blue case for video game players. In total, only 36 copies exist. 8 for Junior TCG, 6 for Seniors and Masters, and 16 more split across the video game divisions. The card itself has a cosmic holofoil pattern along the border and the gleaming silver key at the center. For nearly a decade, the Master's Key was nearly non-existent on the open market. The first copy didn't even surface until 2019, selling for about $21,000. Then in May 2023, a near-perfect Beckett 9.5 copy sold for $66K, tripling the old record. So while Wonder Platinum capped off the Diamond and Pearl Trophy era, the Master's Key marked the start of something new, a prize that unified both sides of competitive Pokemon, TCG and VCG, and one that, to this day, still stands as the Grail of 2010. Okay, now we really are done with prize cards, because sandwiched in between the short-lived Heart Gold Soul Silver era and the Black and White era was a little set called Call of Legends. Now here's the thing, Call of Legends is kinda weird. It came out in February 2011 as the very last set of the Heart Gold and Soul Silver era. But instead of being a true expansion, it was more of a reprint set. Most of the cards were pulled from older Heart Gold and Soul Silver sets, which made it feel like a greatest hits compilation rather than something brand new. In fact, Call of Legends sold poorly, and for years it had the reputation of being a throwaway set. But hidden inside of those packs was something special. A lineup of 11 shiny legendary Pokemon. Cards with silver borders, unique foil patterns, and color-shifted shiny artwork. These are the secret rares of the set, and today they're really the only reason anyone even mentions Call of Legends. And among them, Rayquaza reigns supreme. The shiny black dragon is one of the most popular Pokemon of all time, and the card's artwork captures it perfectly, flying straight towards us through a cosmic sky. Pull rates for this card were brutal. Boxes were underprinted, and because nobody cared about the set at the time, most copies that did get pulled were never treated like high-end collectibles. PSA 10 copies now push well past the $10,000 mark, making it the most valuable card from 2011 and one of the most sought-after shiny legendaries of the entire era. By 2012, the Black and White era was well underway, and many of the sets this year flew very much under the radar. But one that certainly has not is the May 9th release of Dark Explorers. This expansion introduced some of the earliest full art EX cards, a brand new style at the time with textured foil and artwork that stretched across the entire card, and among them was the Groudon EX. The artwork shows the ground-type legendary head-on with a fractured stone background. At the time, these full arts felt like a major leap forward for the hobby. Premium designs that weren't just playable cards, but actual collector pieces. Since Dark Explorers wasn't printed in especially large numbers, and because Black and White sets never saw the same demand as earlier eras, mint copies of Groudon EX full art are pretty difficult to find. In PSA 10, this card now pushes easily into 4 figures. It represents a turning point in the hobby's history, the early days of full arts, which have since become the standard for modern chase cards. Groudon EX showed collectors what was possible, and more than a decade later, it still stands as the highlight of its year. 2013 was the year of Team Plasma. Across 3 expansions, Plasma Storm, Plasma Freeze, and Plasma Blast, the TCG was defined by a bold new card frame. Sharp blue borders, Plasma Energy, and a fan-favorite lineup of legendary Pokemon under Team Plasma's control. It was one of the most distinctive stretches of the Black and White era, with powerful cards like Deoxys EX and Lugia EX shaping both the competitive and collecting scene. But despite all of that, the card that collectors remember most from 2013 didn't have anything to do with Team Plasma specifically. Instead, it was Charizard, hidden at the very end of Plasma Storm as secret rare number 136 out of 135. The pull rate for this card was punishingly low, and sealed Plasma Storm product was not easy to find. As a result, PSA 10 copies regularly sell for over $10,000, making it not only the most expensive card of 2013, but one of the standout Charizards in the entire TCG. And we're not done yet, because it's 2014, and we're gonna play a little game I like to call How Many Charizards Can the Pokemon Company Stuff into a Single Set? 7. The answer is 7. I guess if the set had fire in the name, they really didn't have a choice, did they? At this point in time, we find ourselves at the beginning of the XY era, which introduced us to the first ever Mega Pokemon. And what better way to show off this new mechanic than with not one, but 2 forms of everyone's favorite lizard. The card we're interested in specifically is this one. No, wait, that one. Wait, is there a difference? There is, but it's fairly subtle. I'll give you 3 seconds to see if you can spot all 4 differences. Okay, first there's the gold halo around the border. Second, the gold text boxes. Third, the gold letters. And fourth, a different set number, with the Zard in question being one of the set's secret rares. To be honest, all of these versions of Charizard go for a pretty penny. The Mega Charizard X, Charizard's Dragon form, routinely sells for mid-4 figures. Not crazy compared to many of the other cards on this list, but nothing to breathe fire at either. Finally, we get a break from our lizard overlords, only to fall prey to an electric mouse. 2015 marked the true beginning of one of the most beloved promo lines in modern Pokemon history, the Poncho Pikachu series. And it all started with the opening of the Pokemon Center in Hiroshima. To commemorate the event, the Pokemon Company released a special box featuring Pikachu dressed as Magikarp and Gyarados, a playful nod to the massive statues that greet visitors at the store. These 2 promos, known as Pretend Magikarp and Pretend Gyarados, were actually a follow-up to the first cosplay Pikachu card from late 2014, the Mega Charizard, but this time they went full art. The success of the Pretend Pikachu line kicked off the entire wave of Poncho Pikachu promos. In 2016, Pikachu donned Mega Charizard X and Y ponchos, followed later that year by the Jet Black Mega Rayquaza poncho. Then in 2017, the line expanded further with Pikachu cosplaying as Lucario, Slowbro, and more. Back in 2015, these Hiroshima exclusives were just a fun take on popular Pokemon, but over the years, they've become recognized as high-end collectibles. Sealed Hiroshima boxes now sell for thousands of dollars. In PSA 10, both can hit mid to high 4 figures, with the Pretend Magikarp slightly edging out Gyarados as the true grail of 2015. This video is part 2 of a 3-part series. Part 1 can be found right here, and if it's released, part 3 can be found right here. Otherwise, make sure you sub to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.